What happens when a company grows faster than its processes? Do you slow down to catch up or redesign the engine mid-flight? Welcome to Industry Ignited, the show where we spotlight leaders reshaping how we build, manufacture, and move the world forward. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar. Today, I'm joined by Angie Griffin, Chief Commercial Officer at Third Coast, where she leads top-line growth, marketing, and business development for a fast-scaling chemicals company known for nimble execution, customer intimacy, and serious technical chops. Angie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, Leanne.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. Now, I've known you for a while, but I just recently learned that you earned both your bachelor's and master's in English or literature and thought you'd be in education. So what changed? What drew you from academia into customer service at Lyondell and then into the supply chain?
Quite frankly, I needed health insurance. So if you can imagine a 25-year-old who's finishing a master's degree in literature and had aspirations to keep going, maybe a PhD or some other further advanced degree in the arts. I was looking around, my friends were all graduated, they were in their first jobs and they were starting to buy their first cars and go on fun vacations. And, I didn't have health insurance, so I was still trying to mooch off my parents to pay for rent. So I realized I just needed a job. And at the time, my uncle was working for Equistar, division of Lyondell, in sales, and they were hiring customer service entry-level people. They had just merged a few companies together and were trying to have customer service people from Cincinnati, Ohio, move down to Houston, Texas, and that was not a desirable location for those folks. So they just needed a lot of warm bodies, and I fit that bill. I had that qualification. I was breathing and I could type. So I applied and got the job. I moved from the southeast of the country over to Houston. And initially I thought I'm just going to be here a couple years, get some experience under my belt, and then move on to something else, maybe move back home. But quickly I got into the industry and I realized it was something I could learn, something I enjoyed. I really liked supply chain and I liked solving problems. And this was a company that had a lot of them to solve at the time. They were bringing together multiple companies, different cultures, different systems and processes. And I had a knack for that. And they were really good about promoting from within and developing people. And so my background at that time didn't matter. It didn't matter I was an English major. They were happy to have people who were just willing to roll up their sleeves and work.
Yeah. So you really followed the opportunity is what
That's
I'm
right.
hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's common, especially when you're young. I mean, people often don't know what they really want to do, out of high school or out of college even. And so sometimes it does just take diving in and learning a job and oftentimes, yeah, finding a passion, where there's opportunity.
Yeah,
Now I know.
it's
Yeah.
certainly where there's no, there are so many industries that you're not exposed to, depending on where you grow up or, what your parents did or what your friends' parents did. Some people have tunnel vision on what those opportunities might look like when they enter into college or the workforce. So it was an industry that was certainly not on my radar, but one I've grown to love.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So you've shared that advancing internally, though, was difficult, especially as your husband's career was often prioritized because you were both working at Lyondell. How did that experience shape your drive and leadership philosophy?
Well, it was a frustrating time for me. I was mid-career when we met and married. He was a little bit further in his career at the time, and we were both in the commercial space in the same division at this large global company. We quickly realized, and the people we were working for realized there wasn't a policy violation. I didn't report to him, but we were in the same space. And I think management, the people who managed me and managed him, were probably, in my opinion, a little overly concerned about perception and optics and probably overthought and maybe created a problem in their minds that didn't really exist. So there was a lot of question about, what will the perception be if these two people show up at an industry event together, or one of them's a marketing manager, one of them's in sales. And so I think there was just a lot of overthinking and creating of a problem that did not exist. And so second part of your question, how did that shape my leadership philosophy? I think sometimes leaders can create problems that don't exist and overthink things and let reality be reality and not the perception be the reality, and really just take people for what their skill sets are. Another thing that I experienced at Lyondell was there seemed to be a blueprint for who should fill what job. And it was, you had to check a box. If you wanted to have this particular job, you should have had these two or three prior to that. And sometimes that meant, and especially for me, taking a job that would be challenging and not something that highlighted my skill set. For example, there was a path to a marketing role that required being a business analyst. I was an English major and a
Yeah.
relationship person. I'm not a numbers person. Wasn't at the time. As far as analyzing, I can get into a P&L clearly, but I'm not going to just sit and enjoy digging into data all day. And I was asked to interview for a job and then didn't get the job because I didn't have an accounting background. And I was like, you knew that when I interviewed for it, why even put me in that position? But it was important for me to learn, and I think actually apply now as a leader. You need to put people in jobs where they're going to excel. It's not good for an employee to go into a job where they're going to fill a void of knowledge or a weakness. Putting people in jobs where they're going to try to enhance a weakness, they're going to struggle. So you should always be in a position where you're highlighting what you do well. When I look at the people that work for our company, we're always looking for people who are going to be the best fit. And what have they already shown that they can do well, not what do we need to improve upon.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not so much about checking a box or having specific credentials. It's more about where their strengths are and where they're going to excel.
Yes.
And so they will best succeed and the company will best succeed and
Yes, that are you on the right
benefit.
bus and in the right seat on the right bus?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, Third Coast recruited you after you serviced their account at Lyondell. What did you see in a smaller, nimble company that convinced you to make the leap?
Initially, it was just a place where I could do what we just talked about. It was initially a place where I could do the role that I knew I was suited to do. When I was at the larger global chemical company, I didn't fit the blueprint either from education or work experience, but I knew I was capable of doing the job I wanted to do. I wanted to manage a business. And so when I was hired at Third Coast, I had that opportunity. It was small enough in volume and revenue that I could get my head around it. I already knew the market really well when I came into the role. And so it was a nice place for me to learn how to manage a P&L, understand cost structure, make sure I had all of the market intelligence I needed to make sound decisions. And so that was really it initially, was they're going to give me a chance to do what this other company doesn't think I'm ready to do. And at some point, they might have thought I was ready. It just wasn't at that time. I would have had to have waited my turn. And I
Yeah.
was getting a little frustrated and impatient with that. But at Third Coast, it's a smaller company, and our owner and founder, self-educated, self-taught. He's always open to giving people a chance and just let them, fight through it and work towards success. He's not afraid of watching people stumble a little bit along the way, which was very freeing. It took the pressure off. If you made a mistake, his response was just don't make it again, which is
Yeah.
a really great way to learn.
Right. So I'm hearing like a lot more of a culture fit is
Absolutely.
what I'm hearing. And so just the environment there, one where there's opportunity and it's not about having those boxes checked once again. It's really about what you bring to the table and what you know you see for yourself and him giving you the shot to make it happen.
And it was
Yeah.
also, a growing company, a young company, and I really enjoy solving problems. And so when you walk into an environment like that, a company that's still trying to establish itself and find its way, there's a lot of low hanging fruit where you can add value, and that gives you a lot of confidence too when you can just walk in the door and make things happen.
Yeah, it's like creating your own destiny.
That's right.
Very exciting. Yeah. Now, early on, you managed one business segment, the brake fluid, before moving on to broader leadership at Third Coast Chemicals and then CCO. What were the pivotal moments that signaled that you were ready for each step up?
I think initially getting through some contract negotiations. When I walked into the role, we had some contracts that weren't benefiting us in any way. I was able to restructure those, and I think being able to see that I understood what was driving our business and our profitability, and make sure we had the contracts in place that would right size that, it gave me a lot of confidence. I was also fortunate to have the CEO, his trust. When I came into that role there, the division I was working for was kind of absorbed into the broader organization. There was not any focus on this one particular business division. And so you had people that were supporting multiple entities with no focus on this one. So I quickly went to my boss and I said, I need a team. I need a team that's focused on this business. And he agreed to let me have that. I got to handpick the people that I wanted, and just build sort of this dream team that I knew could really help the business grow. We had a great foundation. We had great relationships. We had a great product, but we didn't have focus. And so him giving me the ability to build that team and focus and put the expertise where I needed it in each area really made a difference.
Yeah. Now you've said growth outpaced process. How did you break down the order system into chunks to improve speed from order to cash?
So this is really speaking towards the broader organization. So we have two core businesses. One is a chemical distribution business and one is contract manufacturing. With contract manufacturing, we definitely grew quicker than our processes. So we had opportunity to look at, or really a need to look at our processes and how complex they were and manual, quite frankly. So the company had grown, over 20, 25 years. We had built all this capacity and we had all these assets and all this volume is running through our plant, but we were still physically pushing paper around the facility. Our priority was to grow and keep up with the demand that we were seeing, not to scale the processes at the same time. So we brought in who's now our chief accounting officer. A woman came in and was helping us look at our order to cash process. And we put it out, we mapped it out on a whiteboard, and we thought this is going to be great. We're going to map this thing out, and we're going to find 2 or 3 things that are really bogging us down. And what we quickly realized, we had this very delicate and tangled web of processes that were holding our business up, and any sudden movements on that would cause all these cross-functional things to just fall apart. So we quickly realized it was not going to be that easy. There were multiple dozens of tiny little processes within this bigger order to cash process that we needed to evaluate and get input from the broader organization. We came in like, we leaders are going to be able to figure this out, but we really needed the people who were in the trenches doing these processes every day. We needed their input, or we were going to make some sudden movements that would just cause it to fall apart.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So you're going in there to basically simplify and streamline, and then you learned that it was more complicated than you expected it to be. But that's a good idea, going to the front lines and bringing the people who are doing the processes on a daily basis to make sure you're not missing anything.
And I think also just attacking it, we realized it wasn't going to be a quick fix. We were going to have to do things probably in a certain order, and then also just one at a time, which took a lot longer than we hoped. But since that time, we've greatly reduced the amount of time it takes us to close our books. We've seen a lot of process improvements cross-functionally that have helped us get better.
Yeah. Now, cross-functional teams helped redesign workflows, yet long-tenured influencers resisted change, you've mentioned. So what worked to bring them on the journey without losing institutional wisdom?
We still struggle with this, honestly. So again, we're a fairly young company. We're less than 30 years old. We have people who are with the company that started with our founder. So they've been here the whole time. They've seen it all. And it is difficult for them to be bogged down in process when historically we had just get it done attitude. And that can work in a company that's, 15 people strong, but we're over 300 people strong. And so just get it done becomes honestly risky. We've got to make sure that all of the people involved in these complex processes understand how we need to do things safely and have sound operations. So we still struggle with that. What we recognize as a company is one of our best assets is our ability to be flexible and nimble. And so we are constantly evaluating how do we scale? How do we get processes in place that'll help us scale? But how do we do that without losing this flexibility and our ability to react to our customers' needs? And it is a constant struggle and a constant conversation within our teams.
Right. Yeah, because you have grown quickly. And I know, there are a lot of people who've been there for a very long time as well, right? So it's like they're having to change along with the company. And I know Third Coast prides itself on being nimble and safe. So what are the guardrails that you're putting in place or KPIs that are helping you keep agile, but preventing risk at the same time,
I
or
think from
lessening
from
risk?
from
Yeah.
a guardrail perspective, one thing is that we are still an in-person company and we are very collaborative. It's nice to be able to just walk across the hall and grab the 3 or 4 people that you need to help solve a problem, or make something happen. That cross-functional communication is extremely important to us, and so we are consistently on calls, with people in all departments trying to make things happen. From a safety perspective, that is our number one fundamental, our top priority. We are a chemical plant and it's a dangerous place to work. What we have learned is saying be safe and work safe. Those mean different things to different people. They're a little ambiguous. So we focus on behaviors, and really specific tasks. So, for example, we have a KPI on what we call loss of primary containment. That's just making sure that chemicals stay in the hoses and in the pipes, and focus on reducing spills, which can clearly be very unsafe incidents. So we say things like keep it in the pipes. You'll hear people just shout it out throughout the plant, but it's really a focus on trying to make our KPIs actionable, not just ambiguous. Safety can mean different things to different people. Me doing something safely might mean something very different than how you think about probably how you put ornaments on your Christmas tree this year. Some people are standing on chairs or ladders. You
Yeah.
translate that to a manufacturing environment, and we just have to be very, very purposeful on what safety means.
Yeah, very intentional, and then keeping people present to the safety and the protocols on a regular basis. I know you have signage all throughout the plant that keeps people aware. Now, where do you see the biggest ROI? People, process, or platform, and how do you measure it?
Is it cheating to say all three? I think these are all extremely important. So, from a platform perspective, when I got to Third Coast, we did not have an integrated ERP system. We were running things off spreadsheets, and certain parts of were on an operating system, others weren't. So, the first thing we had to do was get that done. We could close the books and know how we were performing. From a people standpoint, we have had to make some tough decisions in investing. Sometimes it's hard, for companies to put an investment in training or hiring ahead, especially in an environment where the industry might be in a trough, which is where we are today. We are fortunate that our leadership sees the value in making sure we are prepared ahead of the need. So we have, for example, expanded shifts. We've hired people ahead of having the operating units that we want them to operate, to get them ingrained in our culture and our process, to train them way ahead of the need of the activity. And that's an investment, and it's a real cost, but there's a
Right.
return on making that so your people are ready when you need them to be ready. We've had to upgrade the skill set of the people that we've hired. We initially started doing fairly simple processes, some packaging, some simple chemical blending, but now we're doing reaction chemistry. You can't hire the same people to do those. And so that's also an investment. You're paying more people than you paid them before, and making sure that the company can sustain that cost and get the return on that when we have the volume that runs through the door. From a process standpoint, I've mentioned we really still struggle with catching up on the complexity of our business with the processes that we have in place. This is something that we deal with every day. We have a process that we run. We had a consultant come and help us. I'll give him a plug, Ian McDougall, with Pursuit of Prime. And it's a process that we run consistently with our groups, where we ask ourselves, where are we not doing the best we can do? Answer that question in a certain department or area. And there might be 15, 20, 30, 50, 60, 70 things on that list. And then we prioritize those, and then we assign a team to tackle them. The nice part about this process is that it's pushed down through the organization. It's not the leaders trying to solve these problems. We have the people who are actually managing these processes and transacting these things within our team. They're the ones who go in and solve these problems. And it's been a really successful project for us, and one that we'll continue to do across the organization.
Yeah. So really encouraging the people who are doing the job to step up and solve the problems, since they're the ones working, hands-on every day, and probably the most equipped to solve those problems.
Yeah, I have a saying too when some people come to me and they say I've got a problem, I'll hear them out and then my answer is it sounds like you've got a project. So what are
Ah,
you going to do to solve that problem for you and your team? Not me.
yeah.
Don't bring me the problem. You tell me how best to solve it. And fortunately, we have a culture that allows our people and empowers our people to make those decisions and solve problems.
Okay, that's great. So no, you don't have a problem, you have a project. So
You have a
it's like, what are you
project.
going to do about it? How do you solve a problem? Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a good one to remember. I like that. Now, your remit spans top line revenue, marketing, and business development. While customer service is stretched thin, how do you prioritize opportunity without overloading delivery?
We overload delivery all the time. Part of this is because the nature of our business, we're a service business, contract manufacturing, our customers dictate the timeline. Occasionally we can manage expectations based on capacity constraints or things like that. But typically customers have a need and they need it by a certain time. So we are always trying to meet those expectations. It's hard for us in our business and in our culture, our corporate culture, to say no. What we have to do is make sure that we don't have silos in our organization. Again, the cross-functional communication and collaboration is extremely important. In-person discussions, problem solving on the fly. These are all things that we have to do to be successful and meet the expectation of the customer. It's part of our culture and it's how we hire. We hire people who have high initiative. And it goes back to this empowerment of the employee. We have to have people who we know can make quick decisions, sound decisions that are consistent with, number one, being safe and operationally sound, and also just making sure that we're meeting the customer's deadlines, customers' timelines. But we are overloading delivery on
Yeah.
the daily basis.
So growing by saying yes and then figuring it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Now, I know Third Coast often invests upfront capital to help scale or help customers scale faster and cheaper. What criteria must a project meet to earn that bet?
Typically, it's just, what can the customer absorb if they're going to pay that back over time? And usually that's volume driven. A customer's got a big project. We have to put in a unit, specific to that or make some capital investment on an asset to meet their project demands. It's usually just a matter of we like a payback within, a certain amount of time and can their volume absorb that cost on whatever the back end on what they're selling that for is. Often it's not the capital that's the customer's constraint. Typically it's they have a need, don't have an asset for it, and we might not either at the time, but we can typically design and construct an asset to fit their needs way quicker than they can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, customized chemistries make standardization tough. Where has technology truly improved cycle time or margin? And where is it more hype than help?
I think this is a difficult one for us. We are, a custom chemical manufacturer, so there's very few places in our facility where we're running the same process all the time. And in a lot of cases, we have an asset that's multi-purpose, and different customers and different products are coming in and out of that unit on a regular basis. So, where we can have continuous process, where we need to have flexibility, those are typically more manual.
Hmm.
And automation would hamper us in that case. But we do have places where we are consistently evaluating where are people's brain power, where is that better served than the way we're doing something today. And an example is, we have a rail yard where customers' rail cars are coming in and out. And until very, very recently, like just this quarter, we've very manual process of knowing where those cars are in the plant. So we've got a guy in operations saying, oh, yep, here it is on track 2, and lots of spreadsheets and things to keep track of that. And we're finally investing in some software. We're adding 100 rail car spots. We're doubling our capacity, and it's no longer sustainable, nor is it worth that person's time of day to manually walk across the plant. It'd be nice to just have that at our fingertips. And it's a big investment for us. For the size company that we are, this is a big investment in software, but we know there's going to be a return on having that guy in the plant doing something more valuable with his time.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big expansion as well. So that's
Yes,
exciting. Yeah.
it
Great.
is very exciting.
Now you've celebrated big wins in oil and gas and are pushing into broader, more complex chemistries. What capabilities are you building next to keep the flywheel turning?
It's an interesting time in our industry right now. There is a lot of optimization going on. We specialize in derivatization of commodity chemicals. So a lot of our customers make core chemicals and then they want to make the specialty chemicals that use those commodities as building blocks. So we're seeing a real need in the U.S. Gulf Coast for expanded capacity related to that. To keep up with that, we're adding 100 railcar spots. We're adding tanks to help support blending and reaction. We're adding reactors. We know that the U.S. Gulf Coast is the best place to be from a cost perspective, and we see a real need for this sort of smaller batch chemical processing. So we are in a trough in this industry, as I mentioned earlier, but we are building ahead of that. And we're in a great position. Our leadership has put us in a great financial position to be able to expand ahead and be ready when our customers need us.
Yeah. No, and I've heard that theme throughout, just really looking ahead, being proactive, being flexible and agility. I think that's a big, key. Nimble and agility. Those are two characteristics that I think really let that expansion happen and let you grow into new industries and offer new products and capabilities as well.
We still are very much driven by our founder's spirit, which he's not afraid of anything. And he's confident that we have the people and the capabilities to meet customers' needs. So he's not afraid to try something new. And that's honestly how we've been able to grow. If we just stuck to what we were comfortable with, we would never grow.
Yeah. And he has a fascinating story as well. And just, I think that's been his MO since the start, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Founding the company. So that's awesome. Now you're coaching teams to navigate problems, not escalate them. What habits or playbooks actually change behavior on the floor and in the field?
I think one thing that is super important for us is when I first got here, our leaders were in the weeds. So we were rolling up our sleeves and solving problems. And this goes back to the empowerment of the people on the floor. So we really ask all of our team members to be proactive, bring problems to the forefront. And again, going back to if you have a problem, you have a project, what can they do to make it better? And I think we've seen results where our team members really take ownership and have pride in that. They don't just want to be out there punching the clock and being a cog in the wheel. They really want to be a part of the growth. They want to be a part of the success. And so giving them the tools to improve process and improve efficiencies through empowerment and through this pursuit of prime process that I talked about, we've really seen great results on that.
Yeah. No, and I can say just from experience with your team, there is that sense of ownership and of pride. And each person, like with the fundamentals of the week that you have, for example, and if people visit their Coast page on LinkedIn, you can become, aware and present to the fundamentals, and you have people come in and speak to them, and each person, brings their own spin, on the fundamental and how they incorporate it into their work. And you can hear that. You can, sense the ownership and accountability. And I think that's one thing about Third Coast I admire, most is just how you've instilled that sense of pride and ownership within your culture.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really top down from Jim and the Clausen family. That's something that you can't help but absorb.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on sustainability, you practice product recovery and recycling. Where do circular practices deliver customer value today, and what's still on the roadmap?
This is a tough one, I think, for our industry and where we are today. The petrochemical industry as a whole has been sustainable before sustainability was cool. Waste is loss, right? And so the petrochemical industry for decades has worked to eliminate waste, reduce waste, be environmentally responsible. It's in their best interest to do so. Long before the terms of circularity and sustainability, our industry was way ahead of that. So now you've got these terms that are in play with, real actionable and measurable results that are expected. The low-hanging fruit in our industry, I think, was already accomplished. And so where you can try to find value and do more becomes difficult when the consumer isn't willing to absorb that cost. There's cost to these things. So I saw a CEO speak several years ago. He works for a company that makes products that go into mattresses. And he said that, everybody could have 100% recyclable mattress, but what's the consumer willing to pay for that? And so I think, when you see things like green products and like, a personal care space, those things are kind of easy. And if you have the means to buy the all natural moisturizer that's $3 more than something else, that's one thing. But when you're being asked to buy a fully recyclable mattress that's $10,000 instead of $2,000, people aren't willing to do that. And so I think our industry is at a real pivotal point now where we're trying to figure out what else can we do, what more can we do, and how much will the
Right.
market absorb. Um, the world needs our industry, and sustainability and circularity can't be accomplished without petrochemicals. You can't have solar energy and wind energy, nor can you have lighter trucks and vehicles for fuel efficiency without the products that we create. And so we have to find that balance between making sure these companies can financially sustain themselves and meet the needs of what these goals of sustainability and circularity are. And it's a real tipping point. You see companies in Europe where there are very, very firm and strict sustainability requirements that are struggling financially. The number of petrochemical plants shutting down in Europe is astonishing if you were to go and look at that. You can't have a high cost feedstock and have all these requirements that increase costs that the consumers aren't willing to pay for. So we've got to
Right.
find the right balance.
Yeah, and it's a trickle down effect. I mean, it's like, everything gets more expensive. It's not just absorbing that cost in one place. Everyone has to pass it on if it's more expensive.
That's
And so
right.
I guess the project there, you have the problem. The project there is to find, sustainable solutions that are affordable.
That's
That,
right.
yeah. So I think it'll be interesting to watch and see how that's tackled going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Third Coast is moving towards a next generation transition. What must endure in the culture and what must evolve to keep winning in the next decade?
It's interesting because, our founder, the visionary, he's 65. His son has just been named president and CFO of the organization. So it's nice. We've got both these generations working in tandem, and they couldn't be more different. So Jim is the visionary. Trace is very process oriented, very fiscally mindful. And so watching the yin and yang of them moving our company forward is really exciting. The one recurring theme that I've mentioned several times, we have to be flexible and nimble, but we also have to scale. And so that is the tug of war that we're constantly in. How do we retain that flexibility, but get ourselves sophisticated enough that we are operating safely, we're operating efficiently, and then we can continue to grow. And again, the processes with a 15-person company look very different than one with a 320-person company. And
Yeah.
we have no signs of stopping that growth. So it's a really exciting place to be as an employee, to see this dynamic, this transition, and know how both Jim and his son Trace can learn from one another, and how those two very important pieces can complement each other. We can't have one without the other, where we are and not where we're going.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a fascinating dynamic there. And I mean, it sounds like, yeah, like you were saying, the yin and the yang, they balance each other very well. And so, and I know they have like a solid, like a transition plan, which is
We're
great.
super grateful for that. I think a lot of companies that where the founder is involved, it's hard for them to let go. It is hard for Jim to let go. We're all aware of that. We need him still. We do not want him to go anywhere. We're still very much learning from Jim, but we are very fortunate that Jim and the Clausen family recognize the importance of the longevity of this company. And you have to kind of put your ego aside a little bit, and sometimes recognize that we can't do things the way Jim did them 30 years ago. And he's been very gracious in that. He's not held us back. And we're very, very fortunate that we have a family of owners that puts the company first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for sustainability, that's paramount. I mean, there are many companies who don't have, succession plans in place,
Mm-hmm.
and then they end up, something happens, unexpected, and then everything is at risk.
Yeah.
Everyone's job is at risk. All the
Yeah.
customers' assets are at risk. So, yeah.
Yeah. Jim doesn't, I think some people can just think about, I've got these 320 employees that are relying on me. The Clausens very much recognize it's way broader than that. It's not just those people, it's their families, it's their extended families that are supported by the people who work here. And then it's our customers and their families. And they definitely recognize the level of responsibility that they have to keep this company on the right track.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an important point. It's like accepting that responsibility. It's acknowledging and really uh, being accountable there too
Yes.
for everyone involved. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Angie, thank you for taking us inside Third Coast Journey. Yeah, I've learned a lot, and it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for listeners who want to learn more about you and Third Coast, where can they find out more?
thirdcoast.com and then also thirdcoastchemicals.com. And of course, you mentioned LinkedIn, where you can follow Jim Clausen Jr. would be the star of the show for us on his LinkedIn page.
All right, great. And to our audience, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and tune in next time for more conversations with leaders igniting industry. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry. Thank you.